So, today we're talking about an abandoned airfield that played its role in an assassination attempt that, if it had come off, would have changed the course of human history.
Ooh.
And we're also going to talk about the highest scoring fighter ace in history. Unfortunately, he flew for the wrong side.
There's a lot going on here.
Isn't there just? This is Where'd Everyone Go? With me, Sascha Auerbach.
And me, Tom Ward. A journey into the weird history of abandoned places. So, right, let's start with the airfield. Where is it?
Germany, just south of Berlin. And here we can see the video. The first thing you'll notice looking at this footage is a long building that has a 4-story cylindrical tower sticking out the middle.
Yeah, I guess this was an early type of air traffic control tower, maybe. But there isn't an obvious runway, just a sort of large expanse of grass and patches of broken tarmac.
Yeah, but you get the impression this is more than just an airfield because all these big empty hangar type buildings are dotted around too.
Yeah, and then there's this gymnasium and a theatre. But despite being in Germany, there's what looks like Russian writing on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on here, Sascha? I'm going to guess Soviet flying school.
Well, let's start at the beginning. 1920s, 1930s, the golden age of flight, a time when pilots were celebrities. You have Charles Lindbergh making the transatlantic flight in the Spirit of St. Louis in 1927, and then in the early 30s, you've got the record-breaking flights of Amelia Earhart and Italo Balbo. And we're seeing European and American flyers crossing the Atlantic, expounding the boundaries of flight more and more. Well, this place was at the heart of it all. It's called Rangsdorf. It was one of Germany's premier civilian flight schools.
Okay, but I'm guessing it's quite exclusive. You can't just rock up and say, oh, I'd like some flying lessons, please.
Oh, yeah. I mean, flying is an exclusive activity. I mean, most of the people doing this own their own planes. I'm thinking, you know, you're a successful man, but you probably don't own your own plane.
Not yet.
Not yet. Are you looking into it?
I'm saving.
Yeah. I'd kind of like a dirigible myself. They seem more environmentally friendly.
What are they?
It's a rigid airship.
Oh.
You know?
They take off?
Yeah. Take off, land, fly around in your little... Like a blimp, but, tougher.
What's a blimp?
A blimp is just a big balloon that you, hang a gondola from.
What's a gondola? No, I know what a gondola is.
I'm not going there.
I just realized I don't know anything.
Just a joke. How about this? I just want a hot air balloon?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, yes.
That's a cool way to get around.
Come fly away in my beautiful balloon.
It's you'd trust a man in an air balloon, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Man in an air balloon's like, hey, you want to ride my beautiful balloon? You'd be like, totally.
Son, don't talk to strangers, unless if they're in a hot air balloon, I'm sure they'll be fine.
Yeah. So, back to Rangsdorf. This was for the rich and famous only. And lots of them wanted to learn. I mean, learning to fly was one of the most exciting things you could do at a time. And full confession here, I actually wanted to be a pilot when I was younger. Because the only way that you could become an astronaut was become a pilot. But I didn't want to fly airplanes. I wanted to fly helicopters, which is a bad move there.
Okay.
Like us, they're inherently unstable.
Are they riskier?
Oh, yeah. Airplane pilots, Air Force pilots, you know what they say about helicopters?
What?
They don't actually fly. They're just so ugly that the ground repels them.
Ooh,
yeah,
wow.
Tough.
That's harsh banter.
Yeah, that's harsh banter. But
you always hear helicopter crashes.
Yeah.
CEOs and company owners.
Soldiers and everything. You wonder why people keep getting into the damn things if they're so dangerous.
Yeah, well, if you land, you feel pretty good.
Yeah. And, you get to avoid all that traffic. And everybody hates traffic.
Yeah. You got to weigh it up.
It's kind of a cost-benefit analysis. Like, an hour in traffic or a potential fiery death in a helicopter.
Yeah.
Some people would take the potential fiery death.
Yep.
So, back to Rangsdorf. On the eve of the 1936 Olympics, Rangsdorf held the International Aerobatic Competition, where pilots would fly their planes in loops, rolls, and spirals, and they get scored by judges for their precision in controlling the aircraft.
What is it with the rich? They just love a kind of dicing with death hobby, don't they?
It's exhilarating. It's a challenge. Everyone likes vehicles that go fast, whether they're cars or bicycles or airplanes, right?
Did you say it was indoor?
No. This is outdoors.
Oh, okay.
Outdoors.
I was going to say. So what kind of planes are we talking here? Not
Well,
that I know much about planes. But.
It's all right. they're biplanes. These are the ones with the two wings, one on the top and one on the bottom, and an open cockpit. None of these perspex things over it. It's just you're sitting there, and just generally one person. And they're very, very light by modern standards. It's just wooden fabric mostly.
What we're talking?
Well, the most popular sport plane of the time was the Valkyrie 133 Jungmeister, and it weighed a little bit less than 1,000 pounds.
How much is that in kilograms?
About 500 kilograms.
Wow, that is light. That's half a car. Like cars are more than a ton, which is more than 1,000 kilograms.
Yeah, and have you ever gotten in one of these old planes?
No chance.
Man, I've seen them in museums and stuff like that, and the first thing that you notice is that they're tiny compared to modern planes.
Yeah.
Really, you could almost fit one in this room.
Right.
And you think about getting up to not incredible speeds. They didn't go that much over 100 miles an hour, but you're in a thing that's just basically made of wood and fabric. If that hits the ground, it's going to crumple like a tin can.
It must be very rickety, it just must be very, very intense to be in one of those.
Oh, yeah. Well, the material, the building of them, the materials themselves are so fragile. That's why you have those wires that crisscross the wings, because they're kind of held together by tension as much as they are by the construction.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't fancy that.
So you have these quite light, delicate planes. You don't need tarmac to land them. In fact, you'd probably damage them if you did it that way. So instead, the runways are grass. And what's interesting is they often weren't straight, right? This is what we imagine runways like, nice, long, straight runways. They were a big circle. Why? Well, the engines were so weak that you always had to be able to take off going directly into the wind to increase the airflow under the wings, because that's what causes the lift.
Wow.
Yeah. So you need a circle, so whichever way the wind's blowing, you can take off into it.
That sounds so stressful. I'm someone, when I fly, I applaud landing, but I applaud takeoff as well. I'm so excited by flying. I applaud the whole thing. I'm
you
the
just
guy
clap the whole way
clapping
through.
the whole way there, because I can't believe what's happening.
And do the stewardesses or stewards come down and be like, "Sir, can you stop
please?
applauding at least?"
You're disturbing the babies.
People are trying to sleep.
I just think it's a miracle. I think we're so complacent about the way we live. But it's just we do take it for granted, so it's amazing for me.
Do you always get seated in the screaming baby row? Because I always do. I don't request it. I don't even pay extra for it.
I am that guy now. I do have a baby, I will be that guy this year.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were the screaming baby. Why is that man screaming and applauding at the same time?
I'm moved by the miracle of flight.
And also terrified.
Yeah. But, I did used to be scared of flying, but then, you sort of overcome it. I don't know how, but it's magic, isn't it? Off you go. What are the thrust, weight,
and lift.
Is it 3? Is there a fourth? There's a fourth one.
Drag is the drag counters the lift.
Yeah, I remember this from physics. But a lot of aeronautical scientists can't quite explain it. They use these kind of blanket terms, but then they say, we don't actually know how it gets up there. How it stays up.
You're just not good at a science.
No? There are explanations?
There are explanations.
Oh, okay, fine. All
It's
right.
just plain physics.
I read old science books. Old
Quite-
50s ones.
quite
They're
old.
We don't know.
It's the ether.
It's just God.
God makes it fly. Yeah, that's it. All right.
Don't just clap, boy. Pray.
So back to Rangsdorf. So you want to hear about how they were manufacturing planes here as well.
Do I want to hear that?
I don't know. Maybe not.
Did you ask? I don't know. I felt like you asked, but yes, I do.
Well, I'm glad you almost didn't ask, because the answer depends on who you're asking at the time. In hindsight, what they were actually doing here was quite controversial, all because of the Treaty of Versailles. This is the treaty that ends the First World War. And under the Treaty of Versailles, one of the stipulations was that Germany could not have an air force.
Wow. Okay.
So what they were doing here is they were building gliders, which they could say, oh, this is just for sport and civilian use. But what they were actually doing is the early stages of building the Luftwaffe.
Using
the
loophole.
They looped the loophole. Yeah, this is where they started building the kernel of what would become the German military air force.
Okay.
Yeah. And gliders were used in World War II.
Yeah?
Yeah, many times.
Okay, so they weren't lying, but they were.
But they were, yeah. They built, for example, the Germans built this plane, the Junkers 52, which is a troop transport, so it can carry a very large payload, long distances. But they said, oh no, it's a fast mail plane.
For delivering mail.
No, for delivering mails.
Men. It's an escort.
No, then they would have sussed it. No, yeah, mail, letters. So at the flight school, a lot of civilian flying skills that they're teaching were really the same as military flying skills. I mean,
yeah.
Civilian and military flight, what's the difference except the size and speed of the planes and whether or not they have guns and bombs on them?
Right.
So they just said, oh, no, this is sport.
Okay, so it's all a ruse, all a cover up.
Exactly.
Okay, but then the war breaks out and they just, switch it all out to military stuff.
Yeah, so they take their gliders and they turn them into remote control bombs.
That's fun.
Yeah. The Henschel gliding bomb.
Gift for the kids.
Yeah, I mean they didn't have the little handheld drone things quite yet. It was a bit more primitive. Okay. But this Henschel gliding bomb did basically what we see drones doing in the present day. That's how advanced the Germans were in their tech. I mean, not as accurate again, and these are large things, like they're the size of a real plane, not these little mini buggers. They also started making planes like the infamous Stuka dive bomber, which was very effective at precision bombing of land targets and also had that terrifying siren mounted on its landing gear. So you ever watch a World War II movie and you always hear that, that's the Stuka siren going off because it's meant to inflict terror on whoever it's attacking.
Right.
And these planes are actually kind of slow, and they would go into an almost vertical dive, which makes them much more accurate. And they would release the bomb. Was interesting. The bomb was on this kind of like hinged device on the bottom of the plane.
Yeah.
And just at the last moment, they would pull up and they press a button, and the hinge kind of swings out and sort of drops the bomb straight on the target. And it's very, very precise.
Oof. Yeah.
Compared to just flying at a higher altitude or flying straight and level and then dropping your bombs from there.
More personal as well.
It's more personal.
The way they do that.
When you really want to reach out and bomb someone,
you can look into the eyes of the pilot.
Use a Stuka, and then the siren's just kind of rubbing it in. Like it's not bad enough they're dropping a giant bomb on someone; they have to like scream at them at the same time, sort of like you on an airplane. So then they had the Focke-Wulf fighter, the FW-190.
The what?
The Focke-Wulf. You seem confused by this now.
These
are named after people. They're named after the people who designed them.
Okay.
And the Allies nicknamed this one the Butcher Bird,
right?
Because it had these 20 millimeter cannons on it that were absolutely devastating to the aircraft that it hit. And it was also a plane that often, again, was really good in a dive. So these things would be above the fighters it was attacking, and they just whip in at these crazy ass speeds and take them out before they even knew what was happening. One of the most famous pilots to fly this Butcher Bird, the Focke-Wulf 190, was a guy named Erich Hartmann. And Hartmann is widely regarded as the highest scoring fighter ace in history, with an astonishing 352 confirmed kills during World War II.
His mother must be so proud.
Yeah, I'm sure she was. Less so the mothers of the people that he took out. The French pilots, Polish pilots, Russian pilots. And in all fairness, Erich Hartmann was often going up against people that had far worse planes than the one he was in, that had far less training and experience.
Okay.
At the beginning of the war, some of these air forces were still flying biplanes, for example, these very fragile planes, where he is in this, at the time he's in a Messerschmitt 109, which is like, it's kind of like a Porsche going up against a Robin Reliant in a race. You can't be like, oh, the guy in the Porsche must be an amazing driver. It's like, no, he's in a Porsche, and this dude's in a three-wheel piece of crap.
So we should probably take off a few of these 350.
Yeah, there should be a little asterisk, like one of those baseball stars that was, on steroids when he got his record. A little asterisk next to the 352. But huge hero in Germany, as you can imagine. And you want to guess what his nickname was?
Erich Hartmann.
Yeah.
Eric Potshot Hartmann. Eric the Hitman Hartmann.
That's a good one, actually. Now you make him sound like a mixed martial arts fighter.
Eric the Butcher in the Sky.
Yeah, that's not exactly complimentary, isn't it? Is it?
Eric Cold-Hearted Hartman.
That's actually better than the real thing.
Yeah, what is it?
The real thing was the Blonde Knight of Germany.
Always with the blonde thing.
I know. Well, it's kind of an Aryan thing, I guess. Anyway, to bring it back to the abandoned airfields, the big cavernous buildings we see here today with the huge wide doors, these are where the planes were assembled. And you can still see the remnants of the aircraft weighing scale, which is where they measure the center of gravity for the plane, which is very important to understand its flight characteristics.
Gravity is something to be factored in. to flying.
It's a bit of a downer, isn't
I
it?
remember when they discovered that was more important than God in the early 60s.
We keep praying, but then we realized that, finding the center of gravity and having a larger engine actually works really well.
Yeah, it had better results.
Funny how science works like that. We should have more of it, shouldn't we?
Yeah, blasphemous, but, more accurate.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't want to alienate any of our listeners.
This is why I always tell people never to name their pets after gods. A guy, I was introduced to a puppy one time. I said, "What's his name?" His name is always called Odin. I was like, "Oh, this is a bad idea." He's like, "Why?" He's like, "I don't know, man. You never know.
You never know who these guys were, right? You go back in."
But I think 99.99 times it's better to just go with the science.
Yeah.
Until that puppy is struck by lightning, and then you really
name it after
that.
a science, not the scientist, because they could also be, if they're a man, you just never know. Right?
That's why I name all my cats Einstein.
Yeah. Well, Einstein, risky.
Risky?
I don't know. Do we know everything?
What's there to know? He's from the greatest geniuses of all time.
But we don't know about him, do we? The private life, what he was up to. You got to be careful.
Well, we know that unlike my cats, he didn't clean his butt with his tongue.
As far as we know.
That's it. All right, you want to hear about the assassination attempt?
Yeah, enough of the planes. Come on, let's get to the juicy stuff.
First, let's go to an ad break.
Okay.
So this airport really cemented its place in history on July 20th, 1944, when a high-ranking German officer named Klaus von Stauffenberg boarded an aircraft to go to Hitler's headquarters. And he carried with him a briefcase. Not so extraordinary, you say. He was an officer. They carry briefcases. But in that briefcase was 2 bombs.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Obviously he's not getting on a modern airplane because hopefully they would have caught that. It's like, sir, why do you have 2 bombs? It's like, in case one doesn't work. Always bring a spare.
But I'm a gentleman. Look, briefcase.
I keep it in a briefcase. I'm civilized.
Not just a dirty bomber.
Maybe a dirty bomb.
Gentleman bomber.
Gentleman's dirty bomb. When he arrived at the meeting...
They sell that at Lush.
When he arrived at the meeting at the Wolf's Lair, which is Hitler's Eastern Front headquarters, Stauffenberg found an excuse to go off to the toilet where he armed the bomb, and then he came back and he put it in position. Then Stauffenberg leaves the room again. He hears the explosion and assumes that Hitler is dead because he'd managed to place his briefcase with the bomb in it right at Hitler's feet under the map table that they were all huddling over. Unbeknownst to him, the briefcase had been moved behind a heavy table leg. And it was that heavy table leg that took most of the force of the blast. And Hitler survives. Not completely unscathed, permanently deaf in one ear, burns to his hands and face, and a nasty bout of pink eye, conjunctivitis.
Oh, wow.
I know. Tragic, huh?
One of the smaller known side effects of nearly being blown up.
Yeah. Well, conjunctivitis comes from you can get it from getting debris in your eye.
Right.
And I guess he got poor Hitler got a little debris in his eye.
Oh, man. My eye drops. I need my eye drops.
It's eye drops.
I feel for Klaus. He had one job to do. He nearly did it.
So close.
Nearly did it.
So close, could have taken him out.
I kind of knew that it didn't happen because I know that Hitler went on to do some other stuff.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, this is July 1944, so this is when the war is actually starting to go very badly indeed for the Germans.
Okay.
And Hitler was quite unpopular amongst a lot of the generals who would have rather had a negotiated peace at that point.
Yeah,
they saw the writing on the wall. But Hitler, being a lunatic, was convinced that, still that he can pull out a miracle because he's a genius. He can stop the Russians and the Allies in their tracks.
He's also come so far, isn't it? It's like when you've been married for 40 years. Have you been married before?
Twice.
Twice, yeah. When you've been married for a certain amount of time, you just think, I might as well
put a bomb under the table. Is that what you think?
I haven't been married yet, but...
2 bombs?
I just think, he probably didn't think he could do it, but he'd come too far now to go back. It would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be
do
you know what?
I got to play out the string on this one. Sir, we have millions of Russians at one side and millions of Allies at the other. It's like, yeah, but you got to go through with it,
Nah. You just didn't want to lose
What are we going to tell our sponsors if we stop now? They'd asked for a 6-year war, and we really... Anyway.
And his wife... she might give him one of those looks that wives give.
Yeah, Neva Braun. I'm sure she had those looks.
Yeah. Oh, you backed out.
Yeah. It's like we still have the cyanide whenever you decide.
Yeah.
So back to our story.
So where did he go? Where did Klaus
Stauffenberg?
go?
Well, Stauffenberg got straight on his plane, and where did he fly to? Rangsdorf.
Okay.
And think about this, right? Put yourself in his shoes for a moment, or his leather boots, or whatever these guys wear. He would have stepped off the plane thinking he'd achieved one of the greatest assassinations of all time.
Yep.
He'd hopefully ended the war.
Oh, God.
It's only later he finds out that Hitler has survived. And by then, Hitler had worked out who was the leader of this conspiracy. And a few hours after landing, Stauffenberg is arrested and executed that evening by firing squad.
That's such a day. Do you think anyone has had a more topsy-turvy day than that? Like, you go from thinking you've changed the course of history to being killed.
Well, I did miss a package delivery twice last week, and it was traumatic.
Okay.
I was thinking my life was going to go one way, and then my interdental picks didn't show up, and I had to revise my whole vision of my future.
Right, so you couldn't floss that night?
I couldn't floss 2 nights.
Right, and
you could almost hear the plaque accumulating.
Did you have to go to the depot to get them, or did you just rearrange online?
I just rearranged online.
Okay,
so maybe not quite the same level of drama, but close.
I had a thing where I got a lady's number in a nightclub in the early noughties.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote it on a napkin. I lost the napkin between the club and the night bus stop. Got on the night bus without paying, and then got fined £10 for not having a ticket. So lucky break
for the lady, though.
Well,
probably wasn't her real number. I hate to tell you.
I was a spunky young 20-year-old with a lot to offer in some departments. Maybe not all. But that was
our stories are almost as dramatic. I'm glad we could narrate them.
That disappointment to go from the, you know what it's like when you're a young guy and you get a number of a lady, you can't quite believe it. It feels like a heist. And then you get home and you realize you've lost it. It's just like... So yeah, I relate to Klaus.
She could have been the one. We better not tell Freya that.
Yeah.
You still think about it.
I think about her every day.
Oh, jeez. Freya, he's laughing when he says this, just so you know. It's not the real
Every
thing.
time I see a napkin, I break down in tears.
Well, that's why your mouth is always covered with food. I was wondering. Anyway, back to our story.
Okay, so Klaus has been killed.
Mm-hmm.
But then, hang on, Hitler assassinates himself the following year?
Yeah, funny term for suicide, but technically we could call it self-assassination.
Yeah. Okay. So the war ends, and then what happens to Rangsdorf? Rangsdorf.
The Luftwaffe moves out of Rangsdorf 10 days before Hitler's suicide, and the Soviets move in the very next day. They got straight to work building their own planes, and they concentrate on the cutting-edge technology of the time, jet engines. It's likely that what they actually did is they took some captured German jet technology, because the Germans were making jets at the time, like the famous Messerschmitt 262, and they probably reverse engineered it. And they worked on making some of the earliest Soviet jets, like the MiG-9, the famous MiG-9. And that's one of the interesting things about the Second World War and about the Luftwaffe in particular, is that it really sped up aviation technology. Mm-hmm. However, you got to condition that with the 1930s were a time of broad aviation technology development. So, for example, another really, really famous plane, which I'm sure if I were to say famous planes from World War II, and you being a Brit, what would you say?
B-52.
B-52, it's not even a British plane.
Oh.
The British one, RAF.
The Queen Anne. The
Spitfire.
The Victoria.
The Spitfire is what we were looking for. Oh, my Lord. Man. Spitfire, man.
Come on.
Greatest fighter planes of all time. Anyway, that was developed.
I'm a busy guy.
You're a busy guy. I mean, you can't go to like an airfield here without saying, "Oh, we have Spitfire."
Ask me about skateboards.
No, I will not be asking you about skateboards. You're a grown man. Why can't you get more to war porn? The Spitfire was developed as a racing plane in the 1930s, and it was only later adapted to be a fighter plane.
Right.
Anyway, without the war, some of these technologies probably would have taken a lot longer.
Right. So the Soviets developed plane flight as we know it now.
Well, no, they stole German technology and reverse engineered it. It was really like the Brits and the Americans. Though the Soviets, they did have some great planes, but really kind of leading the pack was the Germans, the Brits, and the Americans.
Okay, so in a way, without Hitler, we wouldn't have package holidays.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably would have gotten there eventually without Hitler.
Right.
He wasn't an engineer himself.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a failed artist.
Yeah, that's one way of seeing him.
I mean, failed amongst other things.
Failed artist, Adolf Hitler, 43.
Put that on your Hinge
Overlooked
profile.
a vast.
I led the fascist government for a while.
I'm just looking for love and to feel connected and have my interests.
No bombs, please, and only speak into my right ear. Also, don't mind my conjunctivitis.
My eye drops. I can't see, they get so foggy. That goddamn Klaus von Hindenburg, what was his name?
Stauffenberg.
That I knew there was something wrong. That ticking suitcase. I said, what is with this guy?
He said, it's just I love clocks.
Yes,
I have so many
I
clocks.
keep clocks
Every time I come here to the Eagle's Nest, I bring a new clock.
I buy them at customs. That's strange. Strange man. Move the case to the other side of the leg while he's having a slash.
Okay. Back to Rangsdorf.
Okay.
So you're probably wondering about some of these other buildings, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so you see, amongst other things, a cinema and as the Germans say, a gymnasium. You'd say a gym. Well, Soviet officers lived on the site with their wives and children. So these were additions to keep morale up and to make it a nicer place to be.
Yeah. Good to keep people fit and healthy.
Yeah. And everyone likes a nice film night.
Yeah. Watch some propaganda movies and do some squat thrusts.
Yes, exactly so.
Yeah. Okay. And so what? Yeah, I mean, it was a while off, but then the Berlin Wall came down in the late 80s. So I'm guessing the Soviets had to leave.
Yep, exactly. And it's been slowly decaying ever since, and that's why it's abandoned now.
Okay. Wow. Just left.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has historic value. Clearly a lot went on there. But, this is why a lot of these sites end up being abandoned, is they're very expensive to maintain. Where's the money going to come from? And frankly, there's a lot of stuff that happened there that I'm sure people would rather forget. But as a historian, I can tell you that's not how it works.
Yeah. I mean, that's your game, is to not let people forget, in a way, isn't it?
We are the keepers of human memory. It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I wonder about the German psychology, because they've got to remember what happened, but they also would probably rather say, that was just a blip.
What's going on in the politics now? There seems to be kind of a very forceful act of forgetting. It's like, hey, let's try the whole kind of extreme right again. Let's see how that works. It really worked well the first time.
Was it really that bad?
Was it really?
Let's have another look.
Everyone had jobs,
Was it Wi-Fi enabled at the time? We've got good Wi-Fi speeds now. We can get the messages across.
And I like how they distance themselves from the new Nazis. We're like, we're not like the old Nazis. We're neo-Nazis. We're hip. We're now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're the same old jerks you always were.
So maybe this place will have another life. Who knows?
Oh God. Well, I really, really hope not. Let's hope that the glider planes and the circular runway was as extreme as things get from here on out.
Great story though.
Yeah.
And I feel for Klaus.
Yeah.
That's a very, very near miss from
and that disappointment too. Like, I did it. I killed him. I killed the son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Get off the plane. You're like,
Yeah. It's like when you get off a plane and you realize there's been a backlash to one of your tweets. You've tweeted before you took off, and then you land, and then you check, and everyone's angry and thinks they didn't understand your tone.
I'm sure it was just like that. I mean, what a brilliant parallel to draw, and good place to end the story.
Cheers, Sascha.
Producer Lewis here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Where Did Everyone Go? New episodes every Wednesday and Sunday. Follow, comment, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out.